Good evening, Democrats. Thank you for joining us for tonight's Meet the Candidates. I'm Lauren Calmet, Political Director here at the Florida Democratic Party. Welcome to the show where we bring on Democratic candidates from across the state so you as constituents can have an opportunity to hear directly from the Democrats on your ballot about the issues that matter the most to your community. We're streaming live on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Twitch. So wherever you're tuning in from, welcome, and please keep the conversation going in the chat. Also, a huge thank you to everyone who will be replaying this video after we've concluded our live stream this evening. And with that, we are incredibly excited to introduce to you a few dedicated Democrats who are ready to flip Florida blue. Without further ado, let's meet tonight's candidates. Wonderful. In our first group, we have two Democrats who are no stranger to the Florida Democratic Party. Incumbents Delores Hogan Johnson and Joy Goff-Marcil are joining us today to talk a little bit about their re-election campaigns. Representative Goff-Marcil and Representative Hogan Johnson, it's wonderful to see you both again.
Thank you. Good evening, Lauren.
Thank you. So I'll start off by introducing the both of you, and we'll start off with some questions. Representative Goff-Marcil values the concerns of her neighbors over special interests. She holds virtual sessions each week to talk openly with residents. Prior to the coronavirus crisis, she hosted town hall sessions, attended community events, and met weekly with constituents. Representative Delores Hogan Johnson is a 30-year public school educator with St. Lucie Public School District. She, as a guidance counselor and dean of students at both Lincoln Park Academy and Port St. Lucie High School, was also a two-time breast cancer survivor and healthcare advocate. She's a founding member and the current president of the St. Lucie Waterfront Council and is currently serving as the state representative for House District 84. Representative Hogan Johnson, let's start off with a question for you. And that would be, as we've learned, St. Lucie has one of the highest rates of uninsured adults in the state, with 1 in 3 adults being uninsured even before the pandemic. How do you, Representative Hogan Johnson, plan to address the growing uninsured population?
Thank you for the question. As you know, I've become a healthcare just warrior, and I was so dismayed that we, the state has refused to expand Medicaid. So I'm pushing and will push harder once I get back, because this COVID has increased the numbers. I think it was over 800,000 before. And for the last 12 years or so, the state has sent back our allocated money. And to me, that's a shame. So I will be pushing, again, as I started to say with COVID, that number's increased to over 1 million and some odd citizens. So the least we could do is just push and continue to push and make that opposing party understand, if you say that you love your citizens and you respect us, then you will care for their health care.
Thank you so much, Representative Hogan Johnson. And I have a few more questions for you, but quickly I'm going to turn to Representative Goff-Marcil, because of course we cannot talk about healthcare without turning it to COVID-19 for a second. So Representative Goff-Marcil, I understand that you represent parts of Orange County as well as Seminole County, and President Trump hosted a rally this past week at the Orlando Sanford Airport in Seminole County after 10 days of testing positive for COVID-19. So what was your reaction to that?
Lauren, thank you again for having me. It was completely irresponsible of the president to host a rally here. And it is 30 minutes from my house, less than 15 miles from my house, which is closer to my actual district, the boundary of my district. And he's doing this when we have, as of yesterday, surpassed 15,000 deaths. We're on our way to 16,000 deaths in the state. With this rally, as you saw on television, very few people were wearing masks, but they were not social distancing at all. And our governor was high-fiving people in the crowd and then touching his face. It was completely irresponsible of both our governor and our president. And that is our leadership that we have right now. And until we get this virus under control, we cannot fully open our economy. And our small businesses have suffered so much from that. We just have to get the virus under control before we can bring the economy back, which is what the president was trying to do, but he's doing it avoiding the virus, which in pretending it's not there. And as of today, there was another article about how Florida is not sharing the rate of positivity rates, and we actually have a much higher rate of positivity of the virus than what we were being told.
Thank you, Representative. And I was certainly like clutching my pearls when I saw that rally myself. And while we're on the topic of Donald Trump, Representative Hogan Johnson, I'd like to talk to you because I understand that of the House Democrats running for re-election, you're one of just two who won a seat that Trump won in 2016, and the only woman of color to hold a seat where white voters make up the majority. So with Republicans funding endless ads behind your opponent, how do you connect with members of your district, and how are you fighting back against their false narrative?
First, I pray to God Almighty because of the ugliness and mean-spiritedness. And I'm talking, we did put up a rebuttal ad, if for lack of a better term, just calling it an out lie. And we've put the spotlight on the hypocrisy of my opponent's attempt at this and embracing, a lie. So the people are calling and asking, and they say, I know it's not you. And that makes me feel good because my life's work has been in this community to help people. So they're appalled. In fact, I got several donations. Here, whatever this can go to help fight this, take it. But they were very angry and upset. So we're pushing back. We're pushing back with our ads, with media and person-to-person contact also.
Thank you so much, Representative. And we know that your record certainly shows that you do care dearly for the constituents in your district, and you certainly have a proven track record of being an incredible advocate. Speaking of a proven track record, Representative Goff-Marcil, we've seen that you've sponsored an education bill the past 2 sessions. So if reelected, do you plan on running another education bill that would help public education?
Yes, Lauren, I am a big supporter of public education, and we've watched over the last 20 years the Republican majority trying to defund public education and teachers of public education schools, and they do this by funding for-profit charter schools and private school vouchers, and there's not the accountability and transparency at these schools that the public schools have to have. And I have run 2 bills that would bring the standards that they have up to the standards of public schools, but they don't want to hear these bills because if they were to bring it up to the standards, they wouldn't make a profit, because public education is not a place to make a profit. We all need to be educated. And I'm considering running a bill this time that would bring us back to where teachers had job security. Because back when teachers knew that they had a job when the summer was over, really brought them to the profession, brought quality people, and we're still having quality people brought to our profession because teachers don't teach for the money, but they need to have stability in their job or they're going to leave our state and go somewhere where they are treated much better. So yes, I am definitely going to run another education bill this session.
Wonderful. I'll be excited to see it. We know that you have been such a wonderful champion for our teachers. Speaking of things that we've seen come up policy-wise in the legislature on the campaign trail, Representative Hogan Johnson, I'd like to turn to you to ask you about a hot-button topic, which is affordable housing. So we've heard affordable housing come up as a topic time and time again while you've been on the campaign trail. In St. Lucie County, rent costs have nearly doubled in the last 6 years alone. So what would you do to address affordable housing in the legislature?
Well, in the legislature, continue to push the fact that the Sadowski Fund should not be swept as it has been. You know, we left with a little hope after this session that it would stay intact, and then came COVID. So, of course, the governor and whomever else, that was a good cover for them to do the sweeping again. You know, with education, with teachers, with those who are in the workforce, they need a reliable resource in order to own homes. And I think that I can't help but say it. It's a sin and a shame. You know, you've got hardworking people that want to have the American dream of home ownership. They're working hard every day. And some of them many are essential workers, nurses and teachers, and all those who work hard, they should be able to access. I always tell people, and I work with our city and counties when they have these funding, like the SHIP program, to make sure that they advertise the fact that there's money out there, because people know it and they apply, but there's still a need for better advertising of the fact in counties and cities. But to speak to that term again, from the legislature, continue to keep it out front that we should not, you know, sweep Sadowski funds. They need to stay there.
Thank you, Representative. I absolutely agree. And the Sadowski Trust Fund, for those who don't know and are watching and are not familiar with this, it's a dedicated revenue source for Florida's affordable housing program via the Sadowski Act. But every year, Republicans use
having
it.
some connection problems.
Oh, that's all right. Well, we've got one last question for this segment. Of course, Representative Goff-Marcil, that means you are up to the plate. We have heard you speak many times about being a proud Moms Demand Action candidate. What does that mean to you? And if reelected, are you considering running any gun safety legislation?
Yes, I am proud to be a Moms Demand Action candidate. And that's because I believe in sensible gun legislation, safety legislation. I am not trying to take guns away from responsible gun owners. I sponsored a bill this past session with Senator Vic Torres, and what the bill would do, it would require gun owners to lock their weapons up at night. And most people that I tell about this bill say, I don't understand. Why is that not already a law? You should have to lock your guns up at night. And especially since these gun store owners are being burglarized at night and criminals are taking these guns and taking them to other states, it's a known problem. So I am going to partner up. If reelected, I'm going to go to Sheriff Mina again and see if he'll help me with this bill again. And I think I've talked to Senator Vic Torres as well, and he's interested in this bill. So what it would entail is all the gun store owners would have to do is put a steel cord through the trigger mechanism. And they could either do that or they could put it in a safe. But if they have a lot of guns, it's really easy to just stick the cord through, because it's like the cord you would put on lawn furniture to keep people from stealing your lawn furniture. It's the same, very inexpensive cord. And they wouldn't have to, they would leave all their guns in the cord. So they would only need to take it out every once in a while. So it's really an easy fix. An example of this being a problem is during the peaceful protests, there were 2 gun store burglaries that night because the burglars knew that the sheriffs were busy with the peaceful protesters, and the gun store owner that had their guns locked up, of course, didn't lose their guns, and the ones that did not have them secured were stolen, and now those guns are on the streets. So that's what I'm for, sensible gun legislation.
Thank you so much, Representative. And I do remember Senator Torres sharing with us that exact legislation last session. And to me, it is just absolutely the perfect example of common sense gun legislation, because I just don't know, I don't know anybody personally who would be against such a thing. It is absolutely just common sense. But that's all the time we have for this first segment. So Representative Goff-Marcil, Representative Hogan Johnson, thank you so much for joining us this evening. It was so great to see the both of you, and I look forward to connecting again when we're all back in Tallahassee.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Rep. Joining us now, we have three candidates from the Sarasota area. We have Linda Stortstrom running for House District 74, Alice White for Sarasota County Commission District 5, and Cory Hutchinson for Sarasota County Commission District 3. Hello, and thank you so much for joining me this evening.
Hi.
Thanks.
Thanks, folks. So for our first question, let's turn to our candidate running for the state legislature. Linda Stortstrom is a school teacher and a yoga teacher for students with disabilities. She moved to Florida 7 years ago following her mother, and we are thrilled to have her with us here tonight. So Lisa, please share with us why you decided to enter this race.
So my name is Lisa Stortstrom. Thanks for having me. And I never thought I would go into politics. I'm a school teacher of 22 years. Following my second career startup, which was becoming a yoga teacher, working with people with special needs. That was after I was involved in a car accident in very busy Sarasota. And I saw that Sarasota was becoming so overbuilt, I wanted to leave and try to save things in 74. So here I am, I moved to South Venice, and I want to work to save what we have here in terms of our natural resources, our beaches, our parks, and our water quality, as well as working for better schools following CDC guidelines.
Thank you so much, Lisa, for sharing that with us. Next up, I'd like to bring up Alice White. She has been a high school algebra teacher and an elementary school teacher, and retired in 2018 after 36 years of teaching, 29 years with Charlotte County Schools. She is a board member of the Manatee Sierra Club, Environmental Conservancy of Northport, Sarasota County Historical Committee, and many more. So Alice, I'm gathering that you have been an advocate for the environment in Northport. Tell us what you think the number one issue that you would begin to tackle right away once elected. What would that be?
Well, once elected, I would tackle the issue of what we are doing to our natural environment. That I really truly believe that Sarasota County, as all of Florida, but especially the Sarasota County, should be the role model in how we protect our natural environment, because it is everything. It's why we're here. It's why people come here. And we need to address how we are developing land, that we are not respecting the natural character of the land. The very reason why we're here and what makes Florida so special is being literally carted away every day by the truckload. And we need to seriously look at how we're upsetting the balance of nature. Of course, you need to take trees down and remove things to build, but to the extent that it's being done, shouldn't happen. And especially how we deal with our wastewater. You know, we had the red tide disaster a couple of years ago, and that's really exacerbated by the excess nutrients we have in our waters coming off of all of those beautiful lawns that are fertilized, and that washes into our waterways and goes into our Gulf and just feeds that red bloom tide. I've been here for 30 years, and I've never experienced a red tide like that. That was just awful. So I plan on speaking for the environment and making sure those conversations come to the table.
Thank you so much, Alice. Next up, I'll bring on Cory, who is running to be your colleague on the commission. Cory Hutchinson holds an MBA degree and works as a college and career advisor for Sarasota County Schools. He lives in Northport with his fiance, which is wonderful. And I'll tell you what's not wonderful. Millions of gallons of sewage have spilled in Sarasota County within the past year and a half. Cory, what is your plan to fix infrastructure?
Thank you. This is a huge challenge for not only Sarasota County, but my district as well. We have some very old infrastructure that runs through Sarasota County. It has reached the end of its usable life. And not just the wastewater treatment facilities, but also the actual pipes and infrastructure that runs under the roadways. So we need to work with people like Lisa when she's elected a state representative and our other state leaders to get some funding to help our county get this project done. Infrastructure is an extremely expensive project to undertake, but we cannot afford to not do it. What Alice talked about, the red tide, is further exacerbated when you have sewage spills. It contributed to that horrible red tide that we had on our Gulf Coast. If that happens again, especially after this COVID economic downturn, we're going to lose a lot of our small businesses that have been around for decades and really made our community a great place to live. So I'm not willing to do that. I'm not willing to let our environment be sacrificed simply because our current county commission doesn't know how to plan. We need to work together, get the funding, and get the solutions down to be able to repair the infrastructure. We have right now one wastewater treatment facility being repaired, others that need it, and the actual sewage pipes themselves that need it. It's going to be a major undertaking, but we need to work to get it done with a sense of urgency.
Thank you so much. It's clear to see that both you and Alice would be wonderful advocates for the environment on the commission. And we certainly need more of those in the state legislature. So I'll turn back to Lisa. Lisa, can you please share with us some changes that you'd like to see in Sarasota County that you'd be advocating for?
Yes. I am so excited to work with Alice White and Cory Hutchinson and all the others who are running. We have a huge team that is running to flip Florida blue, and that's what I'm running with. I mean, it was so wonderful that Dr. Janelle Christensen inspired people to go and run in seats that were uncontested. You would think that I would run for a school board seat or a county commission seat, which I thought about, but there were all these wonderful people there. And then the representative seat here in 74 was uncontested, running against James Buchanan. So I know this is what we need to do. We need to remove the corruption that's stopping us from having a healthy earth. Seriously, we have the funds. My opponent has only served the large corporations. When I looked up what my job would be, the representative for the state is charged with representing important industries and all the people. My opponent has only served the large corporations and themselves. They are taking all of they're profiting from our government. I am running to flip that. I am running to bring back the government for the people. So my slogan is your voice in government. I have much to learn, but I know that that's the first step. We have to go in and look at what has been done, find the funds that are missing, and then make plans. But I know when we go in, we'll start with the Florida Forever program and refund everything that was given to that program. 2/3 of it, the money, are missing. We need to conserve our natural lands. We need to clean up our water supplies. That means limiting and stopping the pollution that is going into our waterways. And like Cory now said, we need to reinvest in our infrastructure that has been ignored for so long. It's decades old. It's from a time when there were far fewer people inhabiting this area. They are archaic, they're not healthy, and they need to be replaced. Third, we need to work on air quality. We need to work on passing bills that call for mandatory car inspections and auto emissions, so that we are having transparency and accountability in all of the major elements that we teach children about. Respecting land, respecting water, and respecting the air. We need to find sustainability in our human behavior and how we are living on this earth with each other and with the planet. And I know that's what most of us want, so we just need to get a lot of us elected, working together. And there's one more thing. We are going to implement the Florida Economic and Environmental Initiative, which was written by several state representatives and senator candidates. So it's really exciting. We need to flip Florida blue and get ready to implement plans that we have at every level. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lisa. And I'm so glad to hear that that Janelle had brought you into the fold. Any friend of Dr. Christensen is a friend of mine. We had some incredible times in Tallahassee while she was up advocating on behalf of the Democratic Environmental Caucus of Florida. That entire team is incredible. Sadly, I will tell you that they were not impressed by the political games that they saw happening in the state legislature. So I can say with all confidence that that is part of the reason, that part of what got her so fired up. So I'm very excited that the two of you had been able to connect. Dr. Christian is brilliant and wonderful. But speaking of political games, I'll turn it back to you, Cory. The Sarasota County Commission undertook a controversial redistricting decision. It was called politically motivated by a federal judge. So what is your opinion on this topic, and what would you two do to ensure fair government processes moving forward and in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. This was a horrible action that took place. This affected both Alice and myself, and also the other Democrat running for County Commission District 1, Mark Piancos. All three of us really kind of got shuffled around at the start of our election cycles due to this redistricting. But the worst thing about it is, yes, it was politically motivated. But when you look at it, we have a community in northern Sarasota called Newtown. It is our most culturally diverse community. It has the largest population of minorities that live in our county. They are very civically active. They're very community active and involved in many things. And they have really gotten the short end of the stick in terms of funding and attention from the county commission for years. So they were up to vote this year for their county commission candidate in District 1. And as part of this redistricting, they were shuffled out into a different district. So they're not going to be able to vote this year. They are largely Democratic. I believe that was part of the motivation. But aside from that, my opponent, who some of the state folks watching may know, is Nancy Dieter. And she spent many, many years in the state legislature doing many bad things. Now she's come to Sarasota County to bring that same mindset with her. And she was the driving force behind this redistricting. Simply, she didn't want to run in the city of Northport's district because she didn't think she could win, because she doesn't care and she doesn't come to visit Northport. So she wanted to be in her hometown in Venice and have her crowd behind her. I think her crowd is fortunately leaving her behind and jumping onto my campaign, which is going to show up here in about 19 days, and we're very excited for that opportunity. But this process was politically motivated. They picked a map to use for the redistricting, hand-drawn by a gentleman who was convicted of making donations in other people's names to influence elections. This gentleman is a political player in the local Republican Party and has been for a number of years. This is the map that they used, going against the community's wishes of, first of all, not redistricting before a census, but going against the community's wishes of a different map that was relatively close to the original one and fair for all. So what we need to do moving forward is to use the census to redistrict fairly moving forward, as is placed in state statute and as you're supposed to do. But we also need to place a provision in our county charter that this type of redistricting cannot happen ever again for any political motivation, because this is one of the most sour things that has happened recently in Sarasota County. And it's really left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths, as well as it should. An unfortunate ruling from the judge that let it stand. The Supreme Court does allow political gerrymandering, unfortunately, and that's what we've got here. So we need to send the message through the election that we won't tolerate that sort of gamesmanship in Sarasota County.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us, Cory. Next, I'd like to turn to Alice to ask her about a question that we've been bouncing around a lot, which is the environment. But also, Alice, what are some ways that you could balance protecting the environment while safely developing the area?
Gee, good question. Yes, first of all, some of those problems arise when there are land use changes. When an area was zoned for, say, 1 unit per acre, 1 house per acre, and then a developer wants to change that, of course, and make it 3.5 or 4 houses per unit, because then you're going to have a greater impact on the environment. One of the things that I have thrown out there is that, again, we need to start back at where we live in order to reduce the amount of nutrients going into our waterways. Again, water is everything in Florida. We know about the Florida-friendly landscape principles. There's 9 principles of Florida-friendly gardening. The Extension Service, which operates from the University of Florida. We have one in every county in Florida, and yet those principles aren't worked into these development plans, and that really should come up in the conversation, that when all of these housing units are going to be built, instead of the standard St. Augustine grass with irrigation, using our precious resource water and fertilizing, to incorporate more of those Florida-friendly principles into those housing projects, because they are going to eventually happen, but they can happen so much better, and just to keep more areas that have not been completely stripped and disturbed, and that is something that can be done. Yes, it means that maybe building 1 or 2 less houses, but you'll have a quality development, and those property values are going to go up, because studies show the more green you have in an area, the higher the property values. I have a nonprofit group, People for Trees. We did a huge street tree project here in Northport, and I read that anywhere the property values of homes that are on tree-lined streets can go up anywhere from 5 to 15%. That means additional tax revenue for your municipalities and for the county. So that's something that we should be encouraging. Money does actually grow on trees. So we need to be working towards those things.
Thank you so much. And that's about all the time we have for this segment. However, I would be remiss if I didn't just quickly turn it over to Cory, because I know that he knows a lot about the 2050 plan. It was a community effort to balance growth and preservation and stop urban sprawl. So it's now been gutted by the current county commission. But Cory, what would you do to bring this plan back and ensure it's followed?
Yes, and actually I will say that my future colleague, Alice White, knows a lot about this plan as well and has a lot of good insight into it. So we'll be great together to bring it back. What it is it was a great community initiative. It really brought a lot of people together, different sections of our county together, and unfortunately, our county commission doesn't care because they bow to their donors and the developers that fund their campaigns. So what we have to do is revitalize the 2050 plan, bring back those community conversations that started it in the first place. We'll do some new things with new knowledge that we've learned in the 21st century and new ideas that we have. But we need to put teeth into it that creates accountability. We have to have some sort of accountability piece to where you can't just ignore it. We need to adopt it into an ordinance or into our codes, to where you can't just choose to cast it aside, but you must listen to it. It started out as such a great thing and unfortunately has turned sour because of who's elected. So we'll work to fix that, and that'll be hopefully a crowning achievement of our 4 years in office if we can get that fixed.
Fabulous. Thank you so much for sharing your vision for Sarasota. And thank you to these three wonderful environmentalists for joining me this evening. It was an absolute pleasure to speak with all three of you. Next up, we are going to some of our candidates from the Panhandle. We are going to meet John Plant, running for House District 4, as well as Rico Williams for Jackson County Supervisor of Elections. Hello, gentlemen. So great to see the both of you again.
Hello, how are you, Lauren?
Good.
Hi,
good.
thanks for having us, Lauren.
Of course. So before we dive into our questions, I'll go ahead and introduce the both of you to our viewers tonight. John Plant is a 20-year software engineer, having worked in multiple disciplines and operations, the size of small startups to a small city-sized operation to multinational corporations. He is an adoptive father, former foster parent with his wife, fostering 4 kids, adopting 2 from foster care with special needs. First off, thank you so much, John, for that work. It's something that is very special to me. I was a former guardian ad litem, and our foster and adoptive parents are absolute superheroes here in the state of Florida. So a big virtual hug to you and your wife, because you are both absolute superstars. With us, we have another Democratic superstar. We've got Rico Williams. He's the former 2-term mayor of the city of Marianna and is now serving his 10th year as city commissioner with so much experience in this community. I'd like to know, Rico, how will the transition be from commissioner to supervisor of elections?
I think the transition will be easy because my background is teaching, which is education, and then coaching. I've been a coach for 14 years and as city commissioner for 10. So tying all those together, I'll be able to get people out to vote and make sure that they understand the process. I was discouraged about going around and people were saying that their vote wasn't going to count. So I spent a lot of my time educating them on how their vote's going to count and getting them to go out and get registered. Now I got to get them to the polls because sadly, our primary turnout was 42.16%, which is something that must change in our area because after Hurricane Michael, we needed a lot of help. And the first thing they said when you called Tallahassee, let me see how many people voted in your area. And that kind of bothered me and made me want to change stream and get into something that I can do that can help the people a little bit better.
Thank you so much, Rico. It's almost very trendy to be running for supervisor of elections right now. It's an election year. What our SOEs are doing are at the forefront of everybody's minds. So I'm happy to see such a qualified candidate running as a Democrat in your county. John, let's turn to you. Why don't you share with us some of your unique qualifications and what you're bringing to the area?
Well, as a former foster parent, my wife and I would not only experience some of the stories of the people whose children we were fostering, but others in the community. My wife has worked or volunteered in some form of social support for about 20 years now. And I, as being the diligent husband I am, I would go along and help her do a lot of this volunteering. I currently volunteer at a food pantry myself to bring food stability to the community. And that actually got started because of my schooling. I have a master's in Homeland Security. And one of the two of the key issues that are going to be a problem in the next decade or so are going to be food security and climate change. So it didn't make sense to me to take my software engineering experience and experience in multiple industries and go into Homeland Security, where it sounds like the real crises are going to be here at home in things that aren't necessarily part of the Homeland Security aspect of government service. And that's also one of the reasons why it led me to run now. We have massive numbers of tropical storms and hurricanes currently forming in the Gulf. We have these wildfires. Part of that Homeland Security background is disaster recovery, prep, policy, things like that. So I think that makes me uniquely suited to the times, really.
Thanks so much, John. And I do agree that food security especially is going to continue to be an area of concern for Floridians due to the inadequate response from the Republican White House and the Republican governor's mansion in response to COVID-19. COVID-19 is only exacerbating issues that have existed in our communities and that Democrats have been fighting to resolve. And now all of these are just being magnified due to the health crisis. So
Absolutely.
I absolutely agree that is going to continue to be an issue, and we just need to get more Democrats elected to every single level of office, because we need these issues prioritized, even before a global pandemic hits. So Rico, let's turn back to you, because voting is on your shoulders a little bit in this conversation. Please share with our viewers, why is the Office of Supervisor of Elections so important in Jackson County?
The reason it's so important because people don't realize what voting takes care of. We have a lot of problems. People come to us with a lot of problems, and this is a problem, and that's a problem. And I explain to them, voting affects everything. It affects healthcare, police reform, Social Security, national security, wages, education, everything that you have to do within this county is affected by your vote. And we tend to concentrate on the local level, but we need to understand how the national vote actually affects us as well. So teaching is something that's very important to me, and get people to understand why it is important to vote, how you can go back and look on the Supervisor of Election website and see if your vote was counted. And if it was not counted, go and find out why it wasn't counted and then contest it. These are things that people need to know. Make sure your voices are heard. Make sure that you're registered, and make sure you get out to vote. As a coach that never had a losing season, 42% just doesn't sit well with me. I want to make sure that Jackson County is well represented, and I want to make sure that I do my part to make sure that we make our mark in the voting process.
Thank you so much. Enrico, I'm going to ask you a follow-up question. Please share with us how you are going to be voting this November. Are you voting early or by mail? What's your plan?
The first day of early voting, me, my wife, my kids, we're getting out to vote. That first day of early voting, we're going to cast our vote, and we're going to stand out there, and we're proud Democrats.
Excellent. I'm also an early voter. I love to early vote. I just like to be there. I know that it's a global pandemic. I will be in my mask, but I am also going to be an early voter. How about you, John? What's your voting plan?
I already voted by vote by mail, and will be tracking my ballot.
Nice. So that's a feature that a lot of folks are not familiar with, is that you can track your ballot online through your Supervisor of Elections website to ensure that it's been counted, and that is very important.
And you can cure your signature.
And you can cure your signature. Absolutely. That's extremely important. We need to make sure that that our votes are counted. So John, why don't you talk a little bit about your platform? So what steps would you take to help folks advance in your community?
I think we need to focus a bit more on education. There's going to be a push to bring businesses to the area, but we need to do something in the meantime, right? So I want to focus on expanding the offerings at colleges and technical schools. I also want to see if we can get programs that lean more heavily into environmental issues in our area. I also want to see if we can improve things for teachers. I know teachers who are new to teaching got a salary bump recently, but that veteran teachers kind of felt left out in the cold, and I want to see if we can do something there, provide funding for that. In Okaloosa County, we have a number of aging schools. I think the average school age is over 50 years old, and our schools are also crowded, which is horrible in a pandemic. And I want to see if we can help put people to work by leaning into infrastructure projects that not only expand our schools, maybe provide new school options, and also provide programs to make sure that all voices are heard within the school environment.
Excellent. And I've also heard you talk a little bit about stability and growth in your district. Can you expand a little bit on that?
Well, there seems to be a lot of Okaloosaans, the younger ones, they don't necessarily stay in the area. And so we need to provide the kind of opportunities for learning that can help attract businesses to the area. Because you can attract business to the area, but if you don't have the technical training for the businesses that get stood up, it only helps the people that you're bringing to the area and whatever side revenue that comes and gets spent in the community. So it's most effective when you have the skills for the businesses you're bringing here to your counties.
Fabulous. Well, thank you so much for sharing that vision. I'd certainly love to see it carried out in the state legislature. But that is all the time we have for this evening. Thank you so much, Rico and John, for joining me this evening. It was wonderful to get to know the both of you much better.
Thank you, Lauren.
And also a big thank you to everyone who tuned in this evening from Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch. We are so close to Election Day, but you don't need to wait to vote. Vote by mail has already started and over 1 million Floridians have already casted their ballots. In-person early voting also begins in many Florida counties as early as October 19th. You can view your personalized Democratic voting guide at sunshine.vote and find additional information there. You'll also be able to see all of the Democrats on your ballot, including recommendations for the constitutional amendments showing up on your ballot this year. Remember, if you have any questions about voting or if you need any help, please call our 24/7 voter assistance hotline at 833-VOTE-FLA or 833-868-3352. Our team is ready to answer your questions around the clock. That number again is 833-868-3352. Thank you once again, everyone, for tuning in. Stay safe.